Good afternoon and welcome to Achieving the Dreams Data and Technology Insight webinar series. Today we are going to be hearing from Columbus State on a presentation titled Assessing Student Success Initiatives, Challenges, and Results. My name is Allison Ray Akalanu, and I am the Associate Director of Data Technology and Analytics here at Achieving the Dream. And I am pleased to be joined by my colleagues from Columbus State Community College, Paul Rusinko, who is the Assistant Director in the Institutional Effectiveness Office, and Julio Moreno, who is the Research Analyst, also in the same office. Columbus State is a leader college and a proud ATD Network institution. So today I'm going to just briefly update our attendees about our Data and Technology Insight webinar series. I will then pass it over to Julio and Paul to give our presentation for today. And then we'll take all Q&A and have a little bit of discussion at the end of this session. So our Data and Technology Insight webinar series is an annual webinar event that we have every year. So we had a webinar back in September to talk about performance measurement and evaluation. And today we'll be talking about assessing your student initiatives. So our future webinars, we have one coming up on November 15th from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And that one will be to discuss how to engage your campus community with data summits. The next webinar we will have is December 5th, again from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern. And we will be discussing how about transfer outcomes and how colleges can improve them. We'll be joined by our colleagues for that webinar from CCRC, our ATD data coach, and Davis Jenkins. For our third webinar that we have in February for our spring series, we'll be talking about the ethical use of predictive analytics in higher education, and we'll be joined from our colleagues from New America. That webinar will be on February 7th, again from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. All of the links are here in this presentation, and you can register there directly. This presentation will be shared following the webinar today, so you can get direct access to these links. And with that, I am going to pass it over to Paul and Julio to kick us off our presentation today.
Thank you very much, Allison. My name is Paul Rusinko, with my colleague here, Julio Moreno. What we're going to do today is to cover our agenda. We're going to talk, of course, a little bit about Columbus State and a little bit about who we are, some of the unique things that we've encountered at our institution. We're going to talk about our integration and collaboration with our colleagues here in IT, who we rely on very greatly to be successful in our work. We're going to talk about some student initiatives and challenges that we've had in assessing the effectiveness of our student success interventions. Talk about the evaluation strategies, developing the methodology, how we developed a holistic approach to overseeing a large number of student success initiatives that are all sort of ongoing at the same time. We're going to talk about what we've seen in the results using that holistic approach. We're going to tie it all together, taking a step back, looking at the big picture of our overall success measures. And then at the end, we will open it up for questions and discussion. We're talking a little bit about who we are at Columbus State. We were established in 1963 as Columbus Technical Institute. It was about 25 years ago that we changed our name officially to Columbus State. Our main campus, we're located here in beautiful downtown Columbus, Ohio. And we've got another campus in Delaware, which is in the county immediately north of where we are in Franklin County. We've got several other regional learning centers around Central Ohio area. We serve 5 different counties that surround the Columbus metropolitan area. We've got enrollment, this is actually slightly out of date. Right now our enrollment is a little over 27,000 students, thanks in no small part to our sort of explosive growth in high school dual enrollment programs. And we typically serve about 26,000 to 27,000 students in each autumn and spring semester. Demographically, we look very similar to what the demographics look like in the Columbus area as far as the race ethnicity of our students go. This is probably similar to a lot of community colleges in that overwhelmingly the majority of our students attend part-time. Only about 30% of our students attend full-time status. We're slightly more female. Because of the sort of explosive growth within the last 2 to 3 years of high school dual enrollment programs, about 61% of our student population is under the age of 24, and that is growing and growing quickly on a yearly basis. And roughly about a third or slightly more than a third of our students are Pell eligible. As Allison mentioned, we joined Achieving the Dream initiative back in 2012. And we were fortunate to be designated as a leader college back about 2 years ago in 2015. Now, giving you a brief history of where we've come from as far as our department is concerned, back around the time that we were starting to think about joining the Achieving the Dream initiative, I guess looking back compared to where we are today, 2012 was virtually it was the Stone Ages as far as we're concerned. By the way, neither Julio nor myself were here at that time, but we've seen the transformation from where we started, let's say about 5 years ago. But in 2012, we had a small office. I think there were at that time, actually, our enrollment was probably more than 30,000 students. And serving those 30,000 students, our office had about 5 full-time employees, mostly focused on compliance reporting, mostly focused on, there was ad hoc requests that we would receive, but we were mostly focused on doing our state and federal reporting. In fact, of the 5 employee headcount that we had at the time, I think two of those employees really were quote unquote data people. We had other people dealt more with surveys or with our IRB, things like that. So it was a small office and even smaller when you take out the people that weren't working specifically with data. We are a colleague school, and back in 2010, we acquired an operational data store to help us pull data out of colleague. Prior to that, to be quite honest, and again, this is Stone Age stuff. I'm not really sure how they pulled data before they bought the operational data store. But in general, there was, even for institutional effectiveness, there was very limited access to data. And in a bigger picture, there was no agreed upon, like campus-wide, there were no agreed upon success metrics. I guess to put it this way, from a data standpoint, we were it was data anarchy. There was just no standards at all. And just to give you an example of what some of our querying or output looked like back in 2012, it was, again, it is literally the Stone Age compared to where we are today as a department. So again, walking through our history a bit of where we were compared to where we are today. Back in 2012, we were thinking about, when we joined Achieving the Dream, that really amped up what we had to do as far as data is concerned. We purchased a data warehouse. Zogotech is our data warehouse vendor. But based on all these initial success metrics that we were required to first of all poll and then report on as a part of our membership in Achieving the Dream, we really had to ramp up quickly in terms of our reporting capabilities and a lot of the technology behind it. After the data warehouse was installed, we at that time at the cabinet level, they agreed upon a college scorecard, success scorecard, where we picked out about 10 to 15 different key performance indicators that we would benchmark on a year-to-year basis. and compare to see if we have had year-to-year improvement in areas such as retention, graduation, certificates earned, things like that, transfer out, just to name a few. And at that point, we realized that we also needed to create a website, or we needed to create some place where the whole campus could go to look at data, and it would be a place where nobody's going to argue the data. It's going to be the standard place where people go to receive official reports, official data, and analytics. And at that point, we decided on SharePoint would be the platform for our business intelligence website. Again, this really predates Julio or my tenure at Columbus State, but the reason that we went with SharePoint, again, this is 5 years ago, so it wasn't, well, it was part of Microsoft. It was a Microsoft product, but it wasn't as well known as it is today. But one of the reasons that we chose SharePoint was it had a familiar interface. Obviously, it's a Microsoft product, so it works well with Microsoft Excel and other tools. It's completely customizable, which we liked, and it gave us a lot of flexibility in terms of what kind of reporting we were going to do, how we were going to build content on the site. So, like I mentioned, our connection with our colleagues in IT is critical, and to kind of just show the division of responsibility, so to speak, we rely on IT. They administer our SharePoint site. They've created the data connections. They've built the architecture around our data so that we can use it, and they create and maintain all of our databases. Excuse me. Our role basically is we take that data that they've built and structured, and we create reports, we create visual tools. We meet with the users, the stakeholders across the campus to figure out what they need, and we're the report developers. So moving along, I guess, in our journey from 2014 really to the present, our Achievement Analytics website is the name of our SharePoint business intelligence site. When we were kind of dreaming about what we wanted our business intelligence website to look like, our mantra really was automation. Actually, there were two. Automation and self-service were the two main things that we were looking to achieve by rolling out the business intelligence site. In addition, we did some analysis of all the reports that institutional effectiveness had received for approximately 18 months, the prior 18 months, and we grouped those data requests in key areas like enrollment reporting or graduation statistics or things needed for accreditation, whether it's program accreditation or the overall school's AQUIP. But what we noticed from all the requests that we had received is we had themes. And for example, when people asked for enrollment numbers for their particular program, well, we created a lot of self-service reports that site users can go into. They can access at any time. They can access it mobilely as well from mobile devices. But they can run reports, and if you just need to know how many students are in my business management program, there's reports for that. And really, it was our goal to knock out about potentially to reduce the number of requests that we received by about 75 to 80% just by creating self-service reports that were available to all site users. I should point out that one of the key groups of stakeholders across the campus that we targeted for training initially were administrative assistants that work for various deans or department heads or VPs. We knew that the admins were going to be the people that are actually going out and accessing the site and running reports. Well, we discovered very, very quickly in our training that when you're teaching somebody how to pull a report and export it into Excel, well, a lot of the admins at the time didn't know how to use Excel. So not only did we have to roll out training on how to use the site, as a result, we rolled out training in Excel basics as well. But at this point, right now we've got over 200 site users. Over 200 people have access, and they receive access to the website after they do one, or depending on what kind of access you're looking for, after they complete one or two training sessions that are taught by one of our colleagues here in our department. One of the next steps that we're looking at, and we've been looking at, it's been on our radar, is looking at predictive analytics in addition to sort of the suite of reports that we have available right now in our business intelligence website. So again, the goal of our SharePoint site, of our business intelligence site, is to centralize data, to pull large data models that use Power Pivot or Power Query, or pull from our data warehouse. We created reports that from very large data sets. We created many SSRS reports. These are student level reports for the most part. These are the reports that we created, for example, to address the how many students are in my major right now, or in this term, or the past year. Users can run those reports at any time and get that data themselves now. And a growing tool that we use, or we've started using within about the past year or so, is Power BI. And another, as I mentioned earlier, really automation was our primary goal. One example is we had a course scheduling report that one of our former colleagues used to put out 3 times a week, update 3 times a week in paper copy form, and it took approximately 6 hours, 6 hours each day to build that report. And of course, it's a paper report, so by the time she put it all together, it was out of date already. It was obsolete. But that report, it was updated 3 times a week. It took 15 to 20 hours of work just for one person, just working on just producing that report. That was one of the first reports that we automated and put out on the Achievement Analytics website, and it saved hundreds and hundreds of man hours of work. And I think it also saved some sanity as well for our colleagues. Now, this is the homepage for our Achievement Analytics website. Just kind of walking in it may be tough to see, depending, but walking across the top, there are various different types of reports that can be accessed. These are all aggregate reports. So we've got key things like our daily enrollment reports that shows our daily unduplicated headcount and hours of enrollment. Our course scheduling report, this is the one that I was just mentioning. This was fully automated. This is the one that used to take 15 to 20 hours of work each week. Now it just automatically updates and refreshes every day. We've got census day reports, so users can go and look up, if they need to look up what was our enrollment at census day in the autumn semester, they can find that there, or any prior semester. And then we have a number of different links along the left side. As previously mentioned, we've got our college scorecard. That's where users can see how we're doing compared to last year with various key performance indicators. And the reports subsection, that is where all of our SSRS, our student level detailed reports are that users can go to for self-service reporting. And at this point, I am going to turn it over to Julio, and he's going to walk you through student success initiatives and challenges.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Julio Moreno, and I work in the with the Student Success Initiatives. One of the sections of Achievement Analytics has to do with the student success. And this piece of student success has 3 different kind of reports that we have been grouping. The first one is the course success by department and by division. The second one is course reports that we have made analysis and try to identify trends in certain initiatives. And the third one is the student success projects. That has to do with any initiative that was included by the college that has been developed and that we need to report in constant basis. Let me show you how the course success report looks like. The course success is a data model that was worked or developed using Power Query and Power Pivot. And what they can see is, what you can see there is the success of the students, the number of the students, and what is the division or department that the students are taking classes. You can interact with this report in Achievement Analytics and select filters about academic year, course subject, the semester. You can pick the semester that you want to analyze. Modality of the course can be web, can be hybrid or blended, as we call when the students come to the school 1 time a month and they work with the teacher, and the rest is in their own, is via web. The division, we have also some demographics there. You can pick the department. You can pick this report by academic status or the gender. This can be worked online or can be done low in the computer of the user, and they can start to work a little bit more with the course report success. Now, when we start to work with the student success initiatives, we face several challenges. The first one is we have a large amount of initiatives, more than 50. We're not overarching goals or silos. They work separately. Some of them assess things in different ways. For example, some initiatives capture the success considering grades as A, B, C, and D, while others just consider success as A, B, and C. This was not working when we tried to make an analysis overall. Some initiatives have developed logic models, but some of them don't have an assessment at all. What we try to do is try to develop a relationship with each initiative leader, getting to know what the initiatives are doing. Then gathering data. This means what systems we have, where is the data living, what programs we have, and in which formats the data is tracked. We also create an evaluation assessment plan with common outcomes. Let me show you how this was set in Achievement Analytics. Each initiative is going to have a folder. And in that folder, we're going to have the main information, the logic model, the plan of assessment, and some of the outcomes that we are obtaining. What I mean with that, let me give you the example of Early Alert. In Early Alert, we develop a report every end of the term that has the outcomes. But we also always can look at what is the evaluation plan or the logic model that we are trying to assess. In case that, as you can tell, I have been doing these reports. In case that I'm not here, somebody else knows what we need to pull and how we need to pull. To show you the evaluation plan was developed by the leader of the initiative with myself, based on a template that has been used in the college and that has been developed for achieving the dream for some of the data coaches. The first thing that we look is the outputs. This means, what are the measures of activity or reach? How many courses are being impacted by the initiative? How many students? Do we have a certain particular number of students that are receiving certain notice or a kudo or a tutoring referral? Also, we look at satisfaction. In this case, we send surveys to the students to see if they are aware of the notice that they got from the early alert, to know if they have any action that they have been doing. We also send surveys to faculty to know how they are using the system and to see if there is opportunities of improvement. One of the main pieces that we have been working on is in these critical measures of behavior change. This means the student got an email from early alert saying that they are having a situation that can be addressed. Do they contact the retention specialist about it? Or if they got a referral for tutoring, do they attend tutoring? Do they meet with an advisor? This implies that we are getting data from different initiatives and different systems sometimes. We need to look at the data from the early alert, and we need to combine that data with the tutoring data that lives in the system called TutorTrack. After we see this behavior, we look at the end result. Then what happened at the end of the semester? And that is what we call outcomes. The outcomes are going to be if the student was successful in completing the class with A, B, or C. That was the definition that we got for all the initiatives. Success is considered A, B, or C. Or the student withdraw, or the student was retained autumn to spring, or autumn to autumn. And something that we have been working on is in persistence in their path. This means the student continue with us or continue somewhere else with pursuing their goal of the education. Some of the students transfer to a four-year institution. Then looking at data from the National Clearinghouse, we try to track if these students are persisting in their path. We develop an evaluation plan where we need to track what measures we are targeting, when that data is going to be collected, what analysis we need to do, again, what is the responsible, and in this case, you have my name there, Julio, and how often this needs to be done. Then this is a simple page, one single page, that shows the plan of evaluation. Of course, there is a lot more that the leading initiative wants to know. Yeah, for example, they want to divide it by demographics or by first generation or by Pell-Eligible. But this doesn't need to be here. Here needs to be what is the main idea of the evaluation. What we can do with that is create a report. And this report has the number of sections that were impacted by the initiative, how many grades were there, how many students, if these students were contacted by the team that works with the student academic success support, and the retention rates. We do this every semester, and then we compile a report that is an annual report. Now, as you can notice, this example that I showed looks at the outcomes, the outputs, outcomes of one initiative. But what we know is that the students are being impacted by multiple initiatives at the same time. It's not that they are the starfish or early alert students. They are students of Columbus State, and they are impacted by early alert and many other initiatives at the same time. Then what we decide to do is thinking in a way to assess what is happening with the students that get more participation. And our first idea was, let's look if the students that participate in more initiatives have better results. In what terms? Well, if the course success is higher, if their GPA is higher, and if they are retained at a higher rate. In order to do that, we identified the students who participate in different initiatives. Then, instead of focus on the initiative, we focus on the student. Then we look at certain student and if they receive an email from Early Alert, if they went to tutoring, if they went to an advisor, if they participate in one of the Generation 1 Trailblazers meetings, like what participation they are having. And when we look at this, we feel that we are looking more at engagement of the student. Once we do that, we cluster the data by number of initiatives. This means we cluster the students that participate in just one initiative or were impacted by just one initiative. How many students were impacted by 2, 3, 4, and 5 or more. These are the initiatives that we did for this analysis. Some of the initiatives have a different time frame, and some have a different way to engage the student. For example, some initiatives happen before the student start classes, like orientation and a placement bootcamp that help them to place at a better level by preparing them for the test. Sometimes we find out that the students aren't placed not in the right class because they didn't study for the test. Then this is to help them to refresh. Some of the initiatives happen during the semester, during class, and sometimes even the students don't know that they are participating. Then, for example, calls 1101 and 1100 are course success courses that the students are just enrolled, yeah, and they don't know that this is one of the plans that we have to help them to succeed. Some initiatives have to do with the course. For example, English 1101 is our developmental education initiative, has an extra time where the student can go and have a supplemental instruction. Yeah. Service learning has to do with projects that they need to do with community. Learning communities, students are in 2 courses that are paired and are being taught by a faculty where they develop some social interaction. Generation 1 Trailblazers, Honors, and Trio are initiatives that has to do with certain specific population. And some of the initiatives have to do with required self-selection. For example, out-of-class academic support, this means tutoring, or blueprint workshops that is an advising piece where the student can see possibilities to transfer. And then with all these 13, what we did is try to analyze how many students were impacted by 1, 2, 3, or more. In this case, we did the analysis for certain population that is new to Columbus State, not transient students, and we exclude high school and dual enrollment. These students that we make the analysis, they are declared major, or some of them are undeclared, but they are not transient or high school. What we notice is that in doing the analysis for fall, almost the same number of new students we have in the last 3 years. Now, looking at these students, we notice that 4% of that 5,000, around 200 people, were not impacted by any initiative in 2014. In 2016, that percentage grew to 6%, around 300 students. What this means is that in 2014, 96% of the students were impacted by at least one initiative. 2016, 94% of the students were impacted by at least one initiative. Now, something interesting is in 2014, 35% of that 5,000 were impacted by one, while in autumn 2016, 31% were impacted by one. But notice the change in the distribution. Autumn 14, 19% were impacted by three. Autumn 16, 23% were impacted by three. This means, looks like we are getting better to encourage the students to participate in more initiatives. There is a small number of students that participate in 5 or more. And let me tell you, there is some that participate in 8 or 9. This means you turn around and you see them. Yeah, they are everywhere in the campus. They are really engaged. Now, let me tell you what happened with the zero initiative students, because this was a concern, how we are not impacting some people. Well, we noticed that 28% of the students drop before the 3rd week of the semester. This means we're not impacted and they drop. By autumn 16, 38% of them were dropping. We also notice that most of the courses that the students that have zero initiatives or not impacted by any initiative, most of the courses were APPL. This means skill trade courses. What we mean with that is we have some agreements with certain unions like electricians, and they come to take a class that help them to develop certain skill or certify certain skill. Then that are the courses that these students are taking, and it's normal that they are not going through orientation or they are not working on the course success class. We also notice that some of the students already have a degree, a bachelor's or a master's. And I need to give the example of my wife. She decided to take a couple more classes about early education in order to get a promotion at work. And she decided to take it here with us. Well, she has a master's degree. Then she's not going to orientation. She's not going to some of the tutoring, even if I tell her that she should, because she's going to help our data. But yes. Now, let me concentrate in the analysis of the students that go to one to more initiatives. What we notice is that the students that go to one initiative or impacted by one initiative are 50% male, 50% woman. But we notice that when students that are impacted by more initiatives are mainly females. That was 2014. The same trend happened for 2016. Then we are impacting more females. In terms of race ethnicity, we noticed that in 2014, 19% of the students that were impacted by one initiative were Black African American, while 63% were white. And that reflects the demographics of the college. But we also noticed that 28% of the students that were impacted by 4 initiatives were Black African American. 45% of the 5 or more were Black African American. In order to reduce gaps, that is important. The same trend happened in 2016. One initiative, 17%, 5 or more, 29%. In terms of academic status, and this is pretty normal, students that are full-time are impacted by more initiatives. Students that are part-time are impacted by less initiatives. In terms of Pell eligibility, we notice that students that are impacted by one initiative, 38% are Pell eligible, while students that are impacted by 4, 57% are Pell. 5 or more, 67. This is in OLM 14. In OLM 16, we notice the same trend. Now, in terms of the outcomes, and I apologize if this graph has so many bars, but I'm going to try to explain what we are seeing here. These three graphs refer to the students that are impacted by one initiative. Then we notice that the GPA is 2.9, 2.18. If we can follow, this looks like a trend, except for that, 4 initiatives in OLM 15. But it looks like we can almost find a trend that shows that more impacted by more initiatives get better GPA. In terms of course success, the trend is more clear. One initiative versus 4 or 5. We notice that there is a difference almost of 18%. In terms of retention, the data is pretty clear. Yeah, the number of people that were retained autumn to spring, 58%. Retained autumn to autumn, this is what's impacted by one initiative. Impacted by 4, 86% retained autumn to spring, and 67% autumn to autumn. In the college, the retention rate autumn to autumn is around 49%. Autumn to spring is around 60%, 68%. Then it's a big difference there. The same results, the same trend happened in autumn 16. Then, tying this together, it looks like students that are being impacted by more initiatives have better success, better outcomes. It looks like the success initiatives add up to their success. And also, the big picture is confirmed. And to talk about this picture, I'm going to pass to Paul.
Thanks, Julio. When we look at our cohort course success rates on an annual basis, you can see, and this kind of mirrors some of the data that Julio is seeing from the impacts of our assessment, or of our success initiatives. We have seen trending upward annual improvement in our overall success rates from the low 60% to the high 60%. We've increased by about roughly 6 percentage points through the course of our last 5 years that we've been involved with achieving the dream. If we look at it another way, if we compare success by gender, again, you can see both male and female success rates have been trending upwards through the course of the last 5 years. Looking at success rates by race ethnicity, and this is just looking strictly at the difference between Black and African American students versus white students, we have reduced the success gap that existed back in 2011-12 was about 22 percentage points between Black and white students. We have reduced that by 28%. There's still a gap, obviously, but this really is, I think this is showing that targeting some interventions to specific, at-risk groups is making an impact. And, we've reduced that gap from about 22 percentage points 5 years ago down to about 16 percentage points. So there's still a gap, but we are making progress, and it shows. And again, looking at students by success rates by Pell eligibility, you'll see overall non-Pell students, their success has been pretty flat over the course of the last 5 years. But for Pell-eligible students, it has increased by almost 10 percentage points. And again, that gap that existed, about an 18 percentage point gap that existed 5 years ago, has been reduced to just by 50% to just about an 8 to 9% gap. So again, it really kind of shows that targeting initiatives to specific groups of students is definitely making an impact, making intentional sort of intrusive or interventions to specific at-risk groups. Now, Julio didn't touch on this too much, but I'll tell you, one of the biggest challenges that we had in Julio has had, at least initially, in taking this sort of holistic approach to see how many students are impacted by how many different interventions. Data collection was a challenge, and in some ways it is still a challenge. Some of that data is housed in different systems, and as we talked about our reporting environment earlier, we pull our data from, for the most part, from our operational data store. Well, a lot of that data wasn't available in our operational data store. Some of it is. Tutor track data, for example, is something that we now pull into the ODS, but it was a challenge just to get data. It was a challenge to, and not only was some data housed in different systems, some data was kept manually on spreadsheets by the owners of different initiatives. And adding to that challenge, from a data perspective, from a personal perspective, you can imagine how when some initiative owners, they're very protective of the initiative that they own, and when somebody like Julio calls them and says, "Hey, can I get the list of students that are involved in intervention X that you own?" Some of them get kind of defensive, or I should say, they used to be defensive because they're kind of thinking, "Well, who are you? Why do you want to see my data?" But I think over time, and actually because of Julio's charming personality, he's been able to deal with all of the owners and gets along just great with them now. But another challenge, like we said, some students are not impacted by any initiative, and they disappear sometimes before we even can get to them. So that has continued to be a challenge. And actually, that concludes our presentation. So we will open it up for questions and discussion.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul and Julio. If the audience have any questions, this is now the time to put them in to our presenters. We have two ways of doing that. You can type them into the chat frame that you should see with the technology, or the little section that says Q&A. So we're gonna take a few moments for you to type in any questions that you might have. We have a question that came in during the presentation that maybe we could go ahead and address. This individual was asking what your definition of transient meant. I believe, I'm not quite sure what part of the presentation this was in. It might have been in either Julio or Paul's section.
Sure. Yeah, we could explain that. Transient does not mean homeless. Transient is our terminology for a non-credential seeking student. So typically it's from our location, for example, it's an Ohio State student that just comes here to take a calculus course in the summer. So it's a student that has, it states that they have absolutely no intention of earning any kind of credential, be it a certificate or an associate's degree from us. They're just here temporarily for a specific course or courses.
Excellent, thank you. So our next question is, how often do you share your evaluation results, and which format do you normally use?
Then the evaluation results per each initiative, we have a plan of when we present these results. Normally it's at the end of the semester, and we do some annual report. But we are working now in develop more on time and be more trying to work during this semester. And then that information will help the initiative to move forward and to address some of the issues that they have.
And I would also reiterate that when Julio completes an analysis, it's posted out within those subfolders in the student success area of our business intelligence website. And essentially, there is a semester to semester library where users can go in and they can see all of the evaluations that have been completed on a semester or depending on an annual basis. But they're all right out there.
Great. Thank you very much. Our next question is about a slide that referenced ATD cohorts and just looking to know how you define these cohorts.
The annual cohorts are, and it was, this kind of goes back to the data that we had to pull when we became part of the ATD initiative back about 5 years ago. But the annual cohorts are students that are new to Columbus State in the autumn semester and are degree seeking. I'm sorry, not necessarily degree seeking, but credential seeking, starting in the fall. Different than like an iPEDS cohort, they can be part-time, they can be full-time, they can have transferred in credits from other schools. So in other words, they're not necessarily first time ever in college. But that's how Achieving the Dream has defined the annual cohorts. I know our reporting, since the reporting now comes through the National Student Clearinghouse, we don't have to do as much hands-on work in pulling the data for the cohorts, but that's how we have always defined it.
Great, thank you. We did have a question come in reference about the scorecard, college scorecard and KPIs that you mentioned. I'm not sure if you're able to share that with the audience. I know you mentioned it briefly, but is there a way that we could maybe get an example of what those KPIs look like, or an example of one of your scorecard?
I'm going to try to pull the site live. Then let's hope that everything works.
Great.
And we'll also hope that you don't see anything that you're not supposed to see.
In true live webinar fashion.
I'm confident that will not happen.
Then this is live, the Achievement Analytics website. There is the scorecard.
So Julio, if you can you go back to share your screen and then select your browser?
Yeah, please give me a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
New share. Or...
You share. And yes. Then can you see it now?
Yes, we can. Great.
Then this is the college scorecard. This is Achievement Analytics. And the college scorecard is basically an Excel sheet where we have autumn enrollment, readiness, some measures of progress, success, retention, and each of these have some reporting. For example, the data of the success completion of all courses, and divided by gender or by other criteria that the board is interested to look or monitor. Then let me go back to the front of the scorecard for you guys to see how it looks. The scorecard essentially tried to measure retention, success, readiness, and completion.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Sure.
All right, so if there are any other questions, feel free to type them into the chat or Q&A frame. And while we do that, Julio, I am going to pull up my screen actually and get your contact information up here.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Close your eyes. I'm going very quickly. All right. Oops. There we go. So our contact information is up on the screen. All of our viewers should be able to see it. So if you want to send us an email, please reach out. Follow